Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons.
Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hey there, Rulers. Welcome back to Ruler School. This is DMO73 bringing you the feature match for the week between myself on a Misty Dragon Fushi list that was sent to me by Will Lugar. Very, very fun list, and you'll see why very quickly. And I'm playing against Kenneth, who is playing his take on Brunhild. Much more of a control kind of long game style, more focused on trying to gain life in as many different ways as possible, not utilizing the same kind of similar in terms of the aggro stuff, but it is more shifting away from being the aggressor and being kind of putting up this huge wall that your opponent kind of just can't deal with. So it's kind of combining, I guess, the Panda list with the aggressive Brunhild list. So nothing on his first turn. I get that Dragonor on turn 1. Just choosing to, I think I was choosing to pass there as well. So Kenneth here using the 2 stones, thinking about exactly what he kind of wants to do here, whether he wants to play it safe or leave up Will. You know, if I try to get aggressive, does decide to go ahead and use 1 to play Whispers of an Angel. So he's going to go ahead and go to 48 life and draw a card. Sorry for the runes being off the board here. It's just because of the way the camera was set up this time. But just gaining that 8 life and then passing turn to me. Hitting another Dragonor here. Going up to 4 strength counters. Casting Reunion of the Master and Pupil, so this is to help me kind of draw and get a little bit more of a consistent hand here. Looking at what's already in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and grab the Welser and a Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm. So the Welser is super important for a combo piece that you'll see here in a little bit. It's designed to kind of help make the start as explosive as possible with a card that, with Misty Dragon Spirit, ultimately. It's a card that there are very few cards in this format that can answer. Do have to discard at the end of turn there. Calls his 3rd stone, hits Magic Stone of Hope. Plays 2, casts that March Hare of Adaraktia. Sorry, just March Hare. It's that 2-drop that gets drained and can get bigger the more runes you have revealed. Looking for a Null Stone on my side. Really need that Darkness Will, hitting the Majin Stone here. Thinking about whether or not I even want to play any cards this turn based on what's in my hand, or just wait to be able to Goddard in the Welser next turn. So, also in the rune deck, one of the major cards there is the rune for 1 will that lets you search for a dragon. So we use that to grab Misty Dragon Spirit, so we can always have it in hand when we need it. Gonna go ahead and just pass turn, actually, just discarding another card. Call and Stone, another Magic Stone of Faith. So the key trick of the Brunhild deck is it usually likes to leave 1 to 2 will open during your opponent's turn, just so you always have protection for whatever you have on the board, or to use as like punishes. See the March Hare come in here. He's gonna go ahead and spend 1 on a Blessing of the Sun to give it that +2/+2. So now it'll be an 8/8 with Drain because he has 2 runes revealed. I say, well, in response to cast, we'll go ahead and try to kill it. We'll give it a Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm. It's not pumped up yet, and with only 2 runes revealed, it doesn't get bigger. So I'll go ahead and give that a shot, because Explosion from the rune deck won't do anything at that point. He'll go ahead and cast Flourishing Hope. Can't really do anything after that fact, so he's going to be able to swing in for the damage. I do want to keep, but it does force him to tap out, which gives me a protected next turn, provided I can hit that Null Darkness, that Null Stone. So swings in for 8 here, I'll take it. He gains another 8 because it has Drain at this point, goes up to 56. The end of the turn he gets to recover because of the Blessing of the Sun. Burn the Energize in 1, Godsart in Welser. Taking a little bit of a risk here after having not seen the Null Stone yet. At this point it's greater than a 50-50 chance I do hit it there, so we'll go ahead and cast
the Heroic Epic told in 1001 Nights, so this gets copied by Welser, so I get to cheat in 2 Resonators that'll be dropped, brought back to my hand at the end of the turn, but I'll just bring in 2 Misty Dragon Spirits, and they can remove themselves from the game and then bring themselves back, so they don't get put back in my hand by the Heroic Epic. So this is kind of the whole gimmick of the deck, is you just try to get out a couple Misties super early, and then push your opponent, push the aggression there with these 9/9 flyers that can't ever really be killed. Kenneth going into his turn, drawing a card, or calling a stone. Paying 3 for a Dark Alice doll, so now he can start pinging things for 200 damage in once per turn. Plus that gives him a nice flying blocker. And it does have 1000 defense, so it can stop one of the Misty Dragon Spirits. Debating whether or not he wants to swing in this turn, knowing that those Misties are there, as well as the Welser. The Welser will get removed at the end of my turn, but Kenneth, interestingly enough, decides to go ahead and spend some removal on it. I think this is an interesting choice, in the sense that he could have just... I guess it's safer, perchance, I'd have to block with the Misties, but like either way, it's going to die at the end of the turn anyway. So if he's not planning on swinging, I'm not sure if spending that Blade of Faith was the right call. He could have just as easily left up that will. Moving into the upkeep here, we're going to go ahead and try to cast, or we're thinking about trying to cast Poison Stinger. We do use Poison Stinger on the Dark Alice doll. So it takes 2 damage, and then any damage it's going to take for here until the rest of the turn gets doubled. So essentially it has 10 damage, or 2 damage on it for its 10 defense, and then every damage from there is going to get doubled. Calling stone here, hitting a second null stone. Gonna go ahead and cast that Zhengong Bao Awakened so that I can get the Tiger and start pushing in that damage a little bit harder. With him only having 1 will and no real way to push up the March Hares to be bigger this turn, I feel pretty comfortable bringing that card in. So I'm going to swing in for 9 in the air, knowing that we're probably going to see a block. Then what happens here is he goes ahead and casts Protection of the Angels, and then it's going to resolve. But before we move to damage, I'm going to flicker the Misty Dragon Spirit out, so then the combat doesn't happen anymore. This is essentially because, like, it's essentially doing this to make sure that, like, sure, he's spent it, but now it's not going to actually block anything. So I kind of get him to whiff on the Protection of the Angels. And swing for 9 in the air, so that's going to connect, taking him down to 47. Then swinging again for 7 because Zhengong Bao is awakened. He's going to go to try to block. And then I'll go ahead and Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm that for 1 because I have Zhengong Bao, so it costs 1 less. Then that 7 damage goes through, take him down to 40. So I've got him back to starting life total here. Feeling pretty comfortable. The Misty Dragon, I'm going to flicker both out so they'll come back in and be ready to use as blockers next turn. Ultimately, I could kill that March Hare right now as well using the Dragon effect to just burn 1, burn myself 2, and then shoot it for 9 damage just to get it off the board. But right now, that's just, I think, a better option to save for something for later. More of a threatening body that I need to hit for 9 damage as opposed to using it here. So the nice thing against white is that Misty, in terms of removal, white really doesn't have anything to be able to actually answer a Misty Dragon Spirit, outside of maybe some traps in regards to Burgeoning Despair. But outside of that, there's really no way that white can actually kill a Misty Dragon Spirit. You know, the board wipe, which they'll just flicker out and come back in. Blade of Fate, they'll just flicker out and come back in. You know, you saw there with Protection of the Angels, I just flickered out. The Mephistopheles, though, is an excellent answer here, because if I flicker them out, they'll just come back in rested, which isn't super helpful when I'm trying to use them as like blockers. Like, that's not really going to do much, or if he's trying to kill them, it doesn't really do much. But on my turn, the problem is now I can't use them to attack and then flicker them and keep them as defensive. So he's just going to go ahead and set up this little wall here. Calling for a stone with Fushi, hitting another Null Darkness. See, I have that dragon spell there. It's not instant speed, so I kind of have to pull the trigger now on it to be able to kill the Mephistopheles, so it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up as to whether or not I want to even try. Burn myself for 2 to give the dragon the guy flying. I'll catch it on the life total here in just a second, I apologize. Swinging in for 7 on the ground. He's going to go ahead and try to miscalc it. I see that's fine. Swinging for another 4 in the air here. This would be wanting to kind of force the Dark Alistal to try to block. And seeing what I want to do kind of in response. Do Explosion to the Dark Alistal. He tries to Flourishing Hope it. Can't really do anything against that, so it's going to stay safe. Now he's got double Burgeoning Despair access. I see that's fine. He gets to gain 4, and it'll kill my Tiger, and then he can ping something for 2 and gain 2 more. He decides to ping me. Takes me down to 28. Keeps him back up to 46. So this would be the moment in time where playing the Dragon Burn spell would be the most effective. Yeah, you see me here. So I try to play the Dragon Burn spell here to burn the Mephistopheles for 9 damage. Gonna burn to use Eternal here, and in response, I'll go ahead and use the Null Darkness that I have in my hand to kill it before the Eternal resolves. So I do get rid of that Misty Dragon Spirit kind of once and for all. Swing both at him to deal 18, take him down to 27. I actually think a better play here would have been to kill the Dark Alistal while I had the chance and then swing in. So it leaves him with just the March Hare, which can't possibly answer it, and gets rid of the flying that turn. Sure, he gains 4, but I'm still hitting him for 9. And so then, you know, it gets that flyer off the board, so he has to then try to reestablish the flyer. I think that was a little bit of a misplay on my part. Sure, giving him 4 life is fine, but ultimately getting rid of that flying blocker means next turn I can push in 9, push in 9, push in 9, and just be back on top. You see my hand here is not super great. It is at this point just double Heroic Epic, so I need to find another card to be able to either cheat in with those or something like that. Or probably we're going to see a Fushi flip here to get another Misty Dragon to come back onto the field. See another Mephistopheles come down, which is really unfortunate. After having to spend 2 cards to get rid of it, now it's back. And it's still going to be forcing those Misty Dragons to come in tapped. The problem is, too, even with Brunhild, so even if I kill this one, the Brunhild can bring back the Mephistopheles. You know, he can just do Judgment into another Mephistopheles. The idea is, even at this point in time, if I can't kill that Mephistopheles this turn, we might see a Brunhild flip, inverting the current Mephistopheles, bringing out a second one from the graveyard, so that I has one on the front and one on the back, which would put me in a pretty bad spot. That's what he's threatening here, but he's already called Stone for the turn, so he can't possibly do it. But if he hadn't, you know, if he had access to that Energize from earlier or something, or if he'd had access to Energize or some way to get that extra will, that would have been the play here, and I actually think it would have been a pretty devastating move. So I'm in a position where I kind of have to deal with that Mephistopheles now, because if he gets one on front and one on back, it's practically the game at that point. There's not really much the Fushi list can do against that. So I'll go ahead and block the Dark Alistal. It's going to take the 9 damage. It doesn't kill it. He'll gain 4. It stops me from taking 4, and then he can ping me and gain some more. So he'll gain a total of 6 life. He's going to ping the other one here for 2. I'll go ahead and block it. He says, well, I'll go ahead and try to do the pump here with Sand Awakening, which would pump it, because that's his 4th rune revealed, that would pump it up to being a 10-10. So I say, well, you know what? I don't really have anything to deal with that. So rather than take that damage and lose my guy, I'll go ahead and flicker and just take the 10 damage. So he gains 10, I go down to 18. So the Misties do get to recover, thankfully. So without a lot of creatures, the problem here is I can't necessarily use the Misty Dragons to attack, because then I can't flicker them out and keep them as blockers. And even if I flip Fushi here, Fushi will come in tapped, and the Misty Dragon that I get will also come into play tapped. So these Misties are essentially my only line of defense right now, which is a problem when I'm snaring down lethal on board. So right now it's 16, like between those 3 cards I'm facing lethal. So I have to push in damage here and hope I get lucky, letting him gain some life, potentially, to make it happen. Now I do have that Master Rune to be able to force a bunch of things to not be able to attack. So we're going to swing the Misty Dragon Spirit into the Dark Alistal, which we should have killed earlier. And now we're kind of in a bad position where we have to kill it now, letting him gain that 4 life and ping us down to 16, just to be able to say Sandstorm and kill off the Dark Alistal. Choosing to call Stone, I think, is a misplay on my part. I think I probably should have flipped there, gotten the other Misty. Unless there's one in my hand, there might be. Heroic Epic. No, there's another one in my hand, so I just did it that way. It's a little bit cheaper, and I can flicker it, keep myself a little bit safer. I could just kill the March Hare here, which is, I think, is the better call, accepting the fact that Mephistopheles is probably going to hit me for 8 damage, but it's not lethal. I don't have a way to deal with it, and we're probably going to see a Mephistopheles, like a Judgment, into a Mephistopheles combo this next turn, which is real sad, but it's just what could happen. So all 3 of the guys are tapped. I'll catch that one needs to be flickered back in, don't worry. He's going to go ahead and perform Judgment here. Gets the Mephistopheles. Goes to invert the stones. So I think the correct call here would be to grab the other Mephistopheles. We both say, yeah, they're all 4 are Hope Stones, so they're all black-white now, just to save on a little bit of time. But I think we actually maybe missed the Brunhild trigger for him to grab something from the grave. So it's a misplay from our end. Apologies there. He just goes ahead and swings in for 10. My Misties are on now 7/7s. I say that's fine. I'll go down to 6. He's got that Misty in hand. My point of having one card in hand is just Heroic Epic, so that's not going to do me much good. At this point, the only real play I have is to flip over Fushi and get the 4th Misty Dragon Spirit. But ultimately, they're all 7/7s, so that's not very optimal. Angel of Hope coming down here. And passing the turn there. Misties get to recover, but they're all 7/7s thanks to Mephistopheles. So Brunhild can simply block one of them. Choosing to call Stone again, hitting another Null Stone. Swinging 7. Blocks with the Angel of Hope, so it gets to gain 2 life. Swings for 7. And swings for 7, taking him down to 44. At this point in time, I will be able to flicker all of the Misties back out and put them back in. So I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. Plus, I have the Master Rune to be able to force these 2 creatures to not be able to attack. Or, sorry, I can force the Resonator not to be able to attack. And then I can just throw one of the Misty Dragons under the bus. Flicker all 3 of them out, cast a Freyla, so it gains Swiftness, but really just, it doesn't even gain Swiftness because of the Misty Dragon, or because of the Mephistopheles, because it doesn't get its enter effect, and then the Misties come in. So just setting up a board block at this point. Making an interesting decision here to cast Odin's Judgment to attempt to nuke the board. I'll go ahead and flicker all 3 of the Misties out here in response. Oh, I think... pay more than I need to for that. To make it so the 2 of them can't block. Oh, yeah, I didn't need to make the other thing not be able to block. And if we're incorrect about Flame Soldiers not stopping J Resonators, then this would actually just be lethal. But either way, I'm in a pretty tough spot, especially when the play that Kenneth is about to make, which is, I believe, playing Mephistopheles. So now I'll have a front side Mephistopheles. So all of my Misties are just going to come back in tapped. And we're right back where we started. So the problem here is even if I flip Fushi, they're just both him and the other Misty Dragon getting all 4, which is great, but getting the other Misty Dragon, they'll all just come into play tapped. Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm can't do anything to that Misty. I don't have any way to deal any extra damage to it. Say, I guess we'll go pushing some damage. Swing in with 1. Take him down to 37. Perform Judgment. He's going to come into play tapped. Get the 4th Misty Dragon, which will also come into play tapped. The idea being that I at least have these 2 Misties to block these 2 attacks. But ultimately, that doesn't matter because Kenneth has access to 2 Burgeoning Despairs in his grave. So he can just pay 6, wipe my board of all 4 of my Resonators, and then just swing in for lethal. And we'll see that play out here in just a second. Phase 3 for the Burgeoning. Sacrifice the 2 guys that are tapped. Pays 3 for the second burgeoning, and I scoop it up, and we go into game 2. As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live, and consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game. So going into game 2 here, I am going to put myself on the play. So you can see that Shengung Bao and that Heroic Epic. Thinking about what else I might want to try to ship away. I don't ever want to keep a Misty Dragon Spirit in opener, potentially, because based on what the rest of the cards are, most of the time you're going to want to ship it away because your turn 1 play is just always going to be Search for Dragon. See that? Dragon Orb, but instead I'm going to go ahead and do the Tiger, mainly because I have the Shengung Bao, so I can try to push some aggression. After having learned last game, maybe the trick is to try to push aggro a little bit heavier, not let it get to the late game. Just passes after turn 1. At this point in time, we're going to go search for the dragon. So I get a Misty into the hand. Swinging in for 4 with the Tiger. Passing the turn there. Choosing to gain 8 during the upkeep with Whispers. Draws him a card. Call Stone, hits that Ore. He doesn't have anything in his deck that uses gems, so we just didn't track it. Instead, he's like, well, it did so well last time. Let's go ahead and pop out and energize the Mephistopheles. I think that's a little risky against a deck like Red, who does have some combat tricks available. Tapping out to do it does leave him at a little bit of a risk. You see I drew that Welser there. I have the Heroic Epic, and I have a Dragon. So if I have a second one, we're going to probably see a cheat out in this next turn. Hitting that Null Stone makes that absolutely perfect. Moving to combat, swing for 4. So that's fine, I'll take it, go down to 40. And at that point in time, I just pass the turn. So thankfully for Kenneth, I wasn't able to capitalize on the tap out to play the Meph. Ultimately, my thought is I'm just going to play these Misties on this following turn. And just kind of push the aggression that way, accepting that the early game blocks are not going to be there. Phase 2. Out comes the March Hare. Gonna swing in for 8. Or thinks about it, then decides not to do it. So he's gonna go ahead and pass to me. So I'll draw for my turn. Thinking about if I want to do anything before upkeep. We're gonna Godzard in the Welser. He will come into play tapped, but then we recover. This is in the recovery phase. Call Stone, hit the Majin Stone, swing in for 4, see if that gets us anywhere. Does decide to go ahead and block. And then try to pump it up. I see in response to the pump up, now that you're tapped out, we're gonna go ahead and use Explosion to kill it and get the 4 damage to go through. The other idea would be that I could use Poison Stinger here because it would, you know, make it a trade, but this way he doesn't get to gain any life. Heroic Epic gets cloned by Welser here, and in comes 2 Misty Dragon Spirits. They will be tapped, but they're still completely safe, and then next turn they can start pushing in all that damage. Feeling much more comfortable in this. Sure, there's the Meph, but the other cards have been pretty easily handled. And at this point, I'm still going to be swinging 18 in the air. I've essentially put him on a 2-turn clock if he can't throw out any flyers. Down comes that Dark Alistal, just like last time. That gives him kind of a pretty solid blocker against the Misty Dragons. And he's just going to pass the turn, so he's going to get removed. Call Stone. Another interesting card here that helps a lot in this matchup in terms of being able to chip things away. Attempt to swing 4 first. Does decide to block with the Dark Alistal. I think is an interesting choice, knowing that I have access to Poison Stinger. So Poison Stinger is going to come down here. He's debating whether or not he wants to respond to it. It's going to take 2 damage, and then it'll take 8 from the Black Spot Tiger. He'll get to gain 4, but it will result in a trade, leaving my Misty Dragons free to just kill it, to just swing in for 18. He's going to gain that 4, go back up to 40. Swinging in for 9. He's going to try to miscalc it. I'll go ahead and flicker it out. Swing in for 9. So he's just going to take it, go down to 31. Joking that I would love for him to block it and get that Mephistopheles off the board. Paying 3 more. Shenggong Bao is going to come in, Awakened, using it to go grab the Heaven Thundering Dragon Palm. Sorry, the Heaven Thundering Strike, my bad. And then I'll just go ahead and kill the Mephistopheles that way with the 1-cost version of that, and then Sandstorm to deal the 8 damage now that he's all tapped out. Get the other Misty flickered out, and then it gets to come back in recovered. So passing turn to Ken at that point. Gonna play another Mephistopheles here, which I'm not terribly too worried about. At this point in time, having 3 creatures on board. He's gonna go ahead and Blade of Faith the Shenggong Bao. Once again, not terribly too worried about that. Go to my turn. Any turn that he decides to not play any flyers feels good for me, even if there's a Mephistopheles on board, because I can just keep pushing damage that way with the Misties. Paying 4 here to play Kame. He doesn't have a Resonator for me to steal, but this is going to be excellent. So now all of my Misties are going to be dealing chip damage too. So essentially each one's going to be hitting him for 11. So taking him down to 20 here after the ping from Kame. Then taking him down to 9 from another Misty here. So this is really nice. This essentially puts him in a position, will-wise, where he can't really afford to do Judgment, because Judgment sure would get him a Misty, and it would do minus, you know, it would give him the, it would give him probably double Meph. But if he does that, I'm just going to make it so the current Mephistopheles can't attack, so then I'll get to recover, and then I can just swing in with both Misties, and like that's pretty much guaranteed death at that point. Or I can just wait and just make it so that his creatures can't block, and then the Misties will kill him that way. And playing the 3-drop board wipe would get rid of his own Mephistopheles, which is not really something he wants, unless he wants to burn even more will to play the Ring of Eternal. So instead, he's just going to decide, I'm going to establish a pretty wide board, play the March Hare, play the Angel of Hope, try to make it so that you just can't push that damage through like you want to. And then is debating about swinging in with the Mephistopheles, does decide to do it. I don't know if I agree with that play, leaving it as a blocker. I mean, it leaves him with just 2 blockers to deal with 2 flyers. Maybe his thought is because he has the miscalc. But again, just with their pure chip damage from Kame, you can whittle things down very, very quickly. So swinging in 9, trigger burn him for 2. So essentially will be neutralized. He'll essentially take nothing. I guess he'll gain 2 from the Angel. Swing in for 9, poke him for 2. And he doesn't have an answer to that. So we're going to move on to game 3. Put me back on the play, which I think was an interesting choice. Maybe just he wants to be able to energize that Mephistopheles on turn 2 as fast as possible. So Black Spot Tiger's going to come in here. Cost that first stone. Magic Stone of Hope. Angel of Hope to deal with the Tiger, or at least be able to block the Tiger. Call stone there. You see I have the Kame, which worked so well last time. Debating whether or not I want to search for the dragon this turn. Ping myself for 2 damage to give this flying. Swing in the air for 4. So I'll go ahead and go to block. And then I will attempt to make it bigger. I think these are... The proper play line here would be to wait and see if I do anything. Otherwise, he's just going to lose it. He is kind of in a lose-lose situation there, because I can just say, okay, I'm not going to lose my creature, that's fine. And then he still is forced to do it. But now by doing it that way, I still get to do the explosion, hit him in for 4, and then because I burned myself for 2, I can play the Majin and swing in for another 6. So on turn 2, just 1,000 damage. And now he's back to being only at 2 will, because he burned the Energize, and he's being threatened by another grand of damage. So you can pay the 1 and play the Whisperers, sure, it takes him back up to 38, but ultimately he's still going to be staring down only 1 will to deal with another 1,000 damage on his next turn. So definitely deciding that probably the best option at this point is just to go as fast as possible and force the lethal that way. Another magic, another Angel of Hope gets to come down in here. Dragon Ore getting more mystery, some more strength counters. Attempting to swing in for 4. Says that's okay, I guess I'll take it. Go down to 34. Swing in for 6. Blocks, I'll gain 2. Go back up to 36. Searching for the dragon here. I do pay for it. Just give me his, you'll see it here in a second that I do pay the will for it. Just got a little ahead of myself. and at that point in time, just passing the turn. Mainly because I want to leave the 2 will open, just in case I have to do something during the upkeep to kill whatever might come down on turn 3, especially knowing that there might be a Mephistopheles coming down. Or even a Dark Alistal. In comes the Dark Alistal, like I said. So this feels pretty good because now I can, you know, Poison Stinger it plus Explosion. Not Explosion, Poison Stinger plus a Heaven Sundering or something like that to kill it out of the way and push in that damage. Every turn that he taps out when I'm on the aggression is great for me because I can push through damage, punish the blocks, and then try to push even more damage through and just keep him on the back foot for the majority of the game. Debating on exactly how I want to do this. Whether I want to do Poison Stinger first or something else. We're going to see the Poison Stinger come down on the Dark Alistal. So taking 2 damage, and then anything else for the rest of the turn is doubled. And go to recovery. Call Stone. This essentially just tells him that he can't really block. So it's a nice way for me to cheat through the 1,000 damage from my 2 guys on board. But I can also just awaken the Shenggong Bao here and go get a Heaven Thundering Strike. The other play would be if I had one in my hand, cast it during upkeep, burn it for, but then it still wouldn't kill it because it gets to get 10. This way the Heaven Thundering is still lethal. But if he does block with it, any of my creatures, he's going to get that damage. It's going to become a trade with the Dark Alistal anyway because of the Poison Stinger. Just debating whether or not he wants to block. Decides to take it. Sure, I'll take 6. Swing in for another 7 with the Shenggong Bao because I have the black spot already. Takes him down to 23. Swing in for 4, and then the Heaven's Thundering Strike comes down to kill the Dark Alistal. 4 damage goes through. He's down to 19. Ultimately, in this position, I think the best option for him would be to board wipe, but ultimately that just leaves him with only 1 open will, which is one of the reasons why I would feel comfortable with him doing that, because then I could probably do going to 5 will, potentially a Goddard Welser, into a Heroic Epic, into double Misty, and then at that point in time, it's like, okay, well, I guess the game's over. Because of how low his life is. Does decide to make the commitment to put a Mephistopheles and then put out a light crest on it to make it a 12. Very large body, ultimately, with the stuff from the Master Rune of Fushi, though, doesn't really do much. I can just force him to not be able to block. Ultimately, though, it doesn't really matter because I happen to draw into a Null Darkness. So again, him being tapped out when I'm being on the aggression, I can Null Darkness. He doesn't have a way to protect it. It's going to get killed. And then I can use the Master Rune to go get another Shenggong Bao from the deck, put it into play. I don't even have to grab Shenggong Bao. I could just grab another Majin Dark Elf if I wanted. Anything with swiftness. And then that'll be 14, 18, 24 damage for lethal. So there you guys have it. That is the match. Huge thanks to Will Lugar for the Fushi list. Super fun list, very creative. And again, huge thanks to Kenneth for being willing to sit down and play with his life gain list. Deck profiles of both of these lists will be up later this week. It might be a little bit of a different schedule, of course, because of the upcoming Charlotte GP that will be happening this weekend. So stay tuned to be watching that live stream. But until then, though, this has been DMO73 saying thanks for watching and class dismissed.